But you know, I've been seeing a lot of the board for a while now, and I've just been in to see them again today. And they told me they want us to go in a different direction. They asked me to thank you for all your great work you've done over the past few years, for the long hours you put in, the stress, the impact on your families. But they view these crises we've been dealing with as mainly in their rearview mirror now, and they just want us back controlling costs. They won't need me to attend the board meetings as often anymore. And I told them we should be investing in AI, that we can get better at transformation, we can prepare for the next crisis. There's loads of different value we can contribute. But they just told me to focus on the costs. They said that our next challenge is to become masters of doing even more with even less, which we're going to have to try and do because they're also cutting our budget this year. I'm sorry, I know this is frustrating. We'll talk again at our normal time, okay? Oh, hello. If you've recently had to deliver that sort of news to your teams, how did you feel? Were you shocked, disbelieving, disappointed, all of the above? Now, I know I'm playing to the home crowd here, but seriously, anybody who thinks that organizations can thrive by viewing the supply chain as a cost center is just plain flat wrong. The positive influence that supply chains have had on business operations is irrefutable, and your impact is at its maximum during times of crisis. The recent past provides us with a treasure trove of examples of how supply chains stepped up to deliver strategic value. When the spotlight was on you, you delivered. But now, as you emerge from the latest series of prolonged crisis, you find yourself in a natural post-crisis state, one that doesn't feel like you've had before. It's a state where workloads are ever intense, priorities ever changing, very often dictated by other functions, and on top of that, your teams are fatigued, and some are even feeling burnt out. Do you feel it? You may also be experiencing a greater sense of disconnection from the rest of the business and struggling to be heard above the noise. You may be getting the creeping sense that the supply chain is losing control of its own destiny and its own strategic priorities. You may even feel as if thinking about the next phase of transformation has become exceedingly difficult and hopelessly complex. And you are not alone. We're hearing these rumblings from the thousands of conversations we have with companies, large and small, public and private. And all of this is happening as we march towards the next great disruption. A disruption supply chain will be asked to and expected to navigate again. Yes, the clock is ticking on our future. And as a supply chain leader, you are now faced with a choice about what the future direction of your organization is going to be. You can choose to remain in the current state with all of the uncertainty and lack of priority that entails. You'll be working extremely hard and be vulnerable to the next inevitable crisis to emerge. And between now and then, you just might find that your supply chain has become trapped in a state of drift. Drift is insidious. Once in drift, you'll be under multiple forms of negative pressure. The pressure to deliver quick wins, the pressure to react to the priorities of others, the pressure to do even more with even less. You'll become a victim of conflicting business goals. It's getting kind of dark in here, isn't it? But let's allow a little light in and consider the alternative. Bearing in mind there's no going back to where you were before. You can discover a far more preferable state than where you are currently. A state where you can elevate the value that the supply chain delivers to the business, where the supply chain controls its own destiny and priorities and informs those of the business. A state where supply chain innovation and process improvement is unleashed to further transform the business. and a state where the trusted strategic value of the supply chain is not only embedded in a business, but fundamentally changes the relationship between your supply chain and your company. This is the state in which you should be running your supply chain. It's a state we call drive. It implies control. It's decisive. It's forward-looking. It maximizes the value of the contribution that you can add to the business. You can move your supply chain to drive by focusing on 4 areas of high reward, which will allow you to deliver differentiated value to your organization. The first is a focus on multi-value contributions, where smart investments create maximum impact. The second, where you create opportunity from uncertainty. The third, design simplicity, where you take a user-based approach to transformation. And finally, artificial intelligence, where you partner humans with AI and generative AI to create value. We begin our journey to drive with a most important topic, the topic of business value. Now, we're traditionally drawn towards thinking around cost reduction and efficiency as ways of delivering value to the business. But we also know that value is much more than just cost reduction. There are other forms of value: improved customer experience, increased sustainability, reducing risk, maximizing innovation, delivering profitable growth. We call these the citadels of value. And if you want to move your supply chain to drive, this concept of delivering multiple forms of value is critical, all while you continue to be the masters of driving costs out of the supply chain. Now, when we look at the latest data on what business consider to be their key priorities, we see that cost reduction is increasing, but it's still well down the list. But it's the number 1 priority for supply chain leaders. But we also know that the supply chain is capable of and indispensable in delivering multiple forms of value across these priorities. In short, enterprises and their commercial business units need supply chains to deliver capabilities that drive business successes. Moving to drive enables organizations to balance these competing demands without risking the organization or overwhelming the supply chain. So move to drive by following these 3 steps. Firstly, define your yes and know your no. This means defining for your team and your internal partners the landscape of business segments you will and you will not operate in. Secondly, enable your yes with a multi-role supply chain organization. And do so by moving beyond the false choice of a centralized or a decentralized model by creating an organization capable of delivering on multiple objectives. Thirdly, do your yes well with multi-value plays by creating initiatives designed to deliver multiple forms of value to the business. Let's look at the first of these. Define your yes and know your no. And who doesn't like saying no every now and again? Don't just have a singular focus on cost, as this will deny you the opportunities to take the benefits of the citadels of value. A do-it-all approach might sound attractive to many stakeholders, but it will lead you to failure. As a supply chain leader, you are closest to the operations. You know your team's capabilities and limitations. And you can explore the best possible combinations of how you can commit your resources to deliver value. Start by defining your focus areas and get buy-in from your teams and stakeholders. Create clear expectations about where you're going to deliver value and clarify the associated risks. Work out your approach for each product category, segment, or commercial group. For some segments, you may primarily focus on cost reduction, with less focus on some of the other areas, whereas for other segments, you may go for a blended approach, combining commercial innovation, sustainability risk, or other important values. Now you can allocate resources accordingly and define clear principles, your yes and your no. This is the first step in your multi-value strategy. Step 2 is to build a multi-role supply chain organization. Underlying the objective to deliver multiple forms of value is the need for a fit-for-purpose organization populated by capable employees, motivated with authority to drive the business forward. As a supply chain leader, you can intentionally assign resources according to the multi-value areas you have chosen to operate in and develop the capabilities required. But beware of old models of thinking. Traditionally, organization designs have focused heavily on centralizing and decentralization, two opposing forces that promise great things. Centralization promises visibility, control, standardization, and therefore efficiency. Whereas decentralization promises diverse consumer experiences, responsiveness, and agility. Neither extreme is a good place to be. And yet on this spectrum, the only alternative seems to be some sort of hybrid model, which actually tells us nothing about how the organization is set up. Enabling your yes requires more than a binary choice, generically applied across the entire organization. Multi-role, multi-value organizations in drive move beyond the language of centralization and decentralization. Instead, they balance the approach by considering the benefits of standardized operations achieved through integration compared to the benefits of serving specific business needs and operating models with differentiation. And you can do so too by working out which activities you wish to integrate, in other words, conduct at an enterprise level, and which you need to differentiate by conducting them at a business unit or segment level. And do this for two different types of activity: operational activities themselves and design activities, which define how to do supply chain. This matrix opens up the organization possibilities to resource your citadels of value. Now let's look at this matrix approach for one multi-role organization took to establish their yes in different ways. In the top right is artificial intelligence, where they partner humans with AI and generative AI to scale decision-making across supply chain operations. In the bottom left, they create a fully differentiated supply chain organization to develop the commercial innovation of a new product launch. Top left, differentiated customer-focused operations evolve by implementing initiatives designed by a center of excellence with an enterprise-wide mandate. And in the bottom right, they have an order management shared service solution for cost and scalability while adopting for local differences. This company showed that organizational choices are not binary, nor are they one size fits all for the very different requirements across the business. Delivering multiple forms of value no longer needs the choice between centralization and decentralization. It demands a multi-role organization that evolves via integration and differentiation. And this is step 2 of your multi-value strategy. We called step 3 multi-value plays. Supply chains that identify and deliver on priorities where one initiative produces multiple forms of value are operating on a principle of multi-value plays. And we've discovered fantastic examples of how you can deliver on cost and resilience, growth and sustainability, risk reduction and cost. Let's look at 3 examples in particular. Target, the US-based retailer, repurposed 10 local stores to become distribution centers, reducing emissions, but also improved same-day delivery by 150% and saved $30 million in savings. What Target was able to do was deliver on 3 elements of supply chain with a single approach. And that's the kind of thing you can do to be able to shift into drive. Diageo, the British multinational drinks distributor, achieved massive production efficiencies, saved millions of gallons of water, and significantly reduced the company's carbon footprint by spraying tequila agave plants through the use of a drone. Now, when I first heard this story, I misread it. I thought they were spraying the plants with tequila. And I thought, you lucky plants. One person operating a drone in this situation completed the work of what used to take 30 people, opening up new job opportunities for Diageo's workforce. And at the same time, production time and costs have gone well down, delivering all sorts of value for the company. Thirdly, Mayo Clinic identified a market segment that could gain both growth and cost benefits from an integrated supply chain approach. They applied top-tier supply chain management capabilities via the Mayo Clinic store value proposition to fulfill customer demand, whether it be through traditional stores or through a patient portal. This increased gross revenue, increased the number of patients served, while also reducing the cost of goods sold. So embrace the multi-value mindset and strategy. Move to drive by following the steps to multi-value contributions, where smart investments create maximum value. These companies all delivered necessary improvements, but it was cost and. They delivered multi-value contributions because they followed the approach of define your yes and know your no, enable your yes with a multi-role organization, and like Diageo, Target, and Mayo Clinic, do your yes well with multi-value plays. These opportunities don't need to just come from our own internal strategies. They can also come from unexpected places due to moments of uncertainty. And moments of uncertainty can happen all the time. They can feel relentless. Relentless. It's like me trying to manage my 4-year-old when she's having a sugar rush. Will you please sit still just for a moment? Just for a moment. Moving to drive requires an acknowledgement that uncertainty is now a constant and forces a reformation of the supply chain model so that you can achieve competitive advantage despite the uncertainty of the environment in which you operate. Let's look at how supply chains react to uncertainty on a spectrum, starting with fragility. A fragile supply chain suffers a loss due to uncertainty, and nobody wants that. A resilient supply chain absorbs a disruption, but neither experiences a loss or a gain, which, isn't bad. But we're beginning to see a new state emerge called anti-fragile. And anti-fragile means being able to create opportunity and even more value in the face of disruption and uncertainty. Now, that's a state we'd all love to move to. Anti-fragility is an emerging state, a north star of organizations in drive. Now, the path to anti-fragility is still being written, but we're seeing a number of attributes that have proven to create an outsized advantage during times of disruption. Anti-fragile versions of certain capabilities are more likely to impact revenue positively compared to fragile or resilient versions. For example, a nearly 5-time increase in revenue during periods of acute disruption from decision process and collaboration, leveraging decision processes that enable dynamic, event-driven decisions at different times. We see a significant impact from risk assessment and network construction as well. Managing the assessment of uncertainty by operating the supply chain with a high degree of experimentation. and supply chain redundancy, changing the value creation for redundancy from one of cost to one of value. These attributes give us a game plan as to how you can evolve your supply chain towards becoming anti-fragile. The first two focus on redundancy. Enable your capability to shift production or supply from one location within your physical network to another, or shift operations within a single location. Diversify the skills and capabilities of people within operations. Train and certify teams to make it or distribute different products within your network locations. And the third helps us to make decisions quickly and experiment in response to disruption by creating a culture of collaboration and defining guardrails to operate within the boundaries of your enterprise's tolerance for risk. Supply chain leaders have proven that they are uniquely positioned to drive value during uncertainty. Because you work in reality, you work on the ground, and your people are equipped to bridge gaps in understanding during moments of disruption. And forged by the disruption starting in 2020, you have also displayed exceptional leadership skills. You are built to seize the opportunity, built to accelerate towards anti-fragility. But our research shows that today, the supply chain still has a traditional view of how uncertainty affects organizations. We know that uncertainty is here to stay. Yet when we asked 150 supply chain professionals as to how they anticipated an exposure to uncertainty would impact their organization, less than 10% anticipated a gain. Let's look at two organizations that knew that just being resilient wasn't enough. Kormotek is Ukraine's largest pet food manufacturer, operating in 42 countries around the globe. Like many companies in that country, they've experienced a host of disruptions. Recession, the annexation of Crimea, the COVID-19 pandemic, and being invaded by Russia in 2022. Let's hear from Ulyana Fitze, the company's Chief Supply Chain Officer, about their supplier ecosystem and their company's efforts to build anti-fragility.
Establishing anti-fragility was not just a worthy goal for our organization, but a necessity following the invasion of Ukraine. Kormotek was not a stranger to disruption prior to the invasion. We've experienced 4 major crises in Ukraine economy in our 20 years history, but the sudden reduction of economic freedom following the invasion had a dual effect of making it harder to become anti-fragile, but also made establishing that anti-fragility more critical than ever. The owners, the Vogue family, showed real leadership. So it was showed great enthusiasm, and actually the external factors, that sudden reduction in economic freedom, that posed the greatest challenge to establishing anti-fragility in these extraordinary circumstances. We had to think experimentally, be creative, and capture new opportunities.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine immediately changed the overall way that they thought about business and about uncertainty drivers. Decisions were streamlined, and the whole organization became more horizontal. Prior to the invasion, many of the company's suppliers were outside of the country. And so they had to train up new suppliers and show them what to produce so that they could actually start to support the way in which they were delivering products. And they identified 2 suppliers who previously no experience of producing raw materials for pet food. Now, they have key suppliers who are offering shorter lead times and cheaper prices. Executives changed the company's mindset, structure, and decision-making framework. And in the past 2 years, they've not only retained all of their customers, they grew revenue by 14% in 2022 and by 22% last year. They are driving value in the face of massive uncertainty by opening themselves up to new opportunities. JD.com is another company that was able to turn uncertainty and disruption into a competitive advantage. They're a massive online retailer in China with over 500 million active customers, 10 million SKUs, and about 1,500 warehouses in China alone. During the COVID-19 pandemic, demand in Shanghai skyrocketed for basic consumer products. And JD.com was able to meet the needs of the market in full without raising prices or losing inventory, because they were already working on a probabilistic planning solution before COVID-19 struck. They developed a digital twin that helped them anticipate the impact of ongoing uncertainty. And by bringing uncertainty inside, JD.com spotted the opportunity to switch its decisions from being plan-based to being experiment-based. In the end, they succeeded in a market in which their competitors only struggled. JD.com and Cormatech are excellent examples of companies who are applying the anti-fragility playbook to go beyond resilience to deliver value in times of great uncertainty. And this is the approach that you should take too. Develop the capabilities to shift production, supply, and operations. Diversify the skills and capabilities of people within your operations, and create a collaborative risk management culture. Embrace this playbook, and you will move to drive. Now, delivering multi-value plays and developing anti-fragility are big changes that require transformation. And transformation takes a lot of work. The rate of transformation is increasing exponentially. In fact, 90% of you are either in the middle of a transformation program right now or planning to do one in the next 12 months. That's 90%. These transformations are fundamental changes in what you do and how you do it, and they're related to new technologies, new org structures, and new value streams. And they're happening within a broader context of business change. And sometimes they are train wrecks. Let me tell you a story about how transformation programs often fail. Picture the scene. A company decides to start an ambitious supply chain transformation program. It starts with much fanfare, buoyed by a compelling business case, a motivated team of users, and a user community seduced by the promises that the way in which they work will be transformed forever. The program sets out its nice ambitious goals with its neatly defined work streams, and we're off. Things start well, but after a number of months, words such as complex challenges, difficult decisions, and in hindsight, are being heard at an alarming rate of frequency within the program office. With time and money now being burned at a furious pace, the planned deliverables suddenly split into phase 1 and phase 2. With phase 2 now containing those complex challenges that could delay the transformation. Some suitably long grass is found into which phase 2 is buried, and the project team rush back to the office to get on with phase 1. As time moves on, even phase 1 starts to look more complex than originally thought. And shortly after, a new term enters the program's team vocabulary. Phase 1A. A back burner used in many previous transformation programs is retrieved from storage, onto which phase 1B is carefully placed. And as the program team yet again shift their focus away from the complex deliverables, the original strapline of the program, building our futures together, now sounds more like, let's just get this thing done. On the originally intended go-live day, and with just loose change remaining in the program's team piggy bank, and a burnt-out team desperate to go and work on something else, anything else, the first part of phase 1A goes live. Like a rocket re-entering the Earth's atmosphere with bits falling off everywhere, the program finally lands. In the distance, The wheezing sound of a half-hearted trumpet can be heard. The users, largely unaware of the chaos of the program for the last 2 years, gather around with giddy excitement to inspect the contents of the first part of Phase 1A and collectively ask the same question: where's all that good stuff we were promised? I'm too old for all this running around. Now, in stark contrast to this completely fictitious story that's never happened to anyone in this room, top-tier transforming companies are more likely to deliver all of the good stuff they promise and achieve benefits that others can't. For example, they achieve 123% better staff satisfaction than those who weren't so great at transforming. They achieve these benefits by using a methodology that we call designed simplicity. Designed simplicity is a user experience-based approach to business transformation that seeks to deliberately reduce complexity by designing them to be easy and understand and execute. For design simplicity to work in your transformation, it has to be deliberate and intentional, because you can't achieve simplicity by accident. Business processes must prioritize user experience because only users are capable of determining what is simple and what isn't. And these processes must also specifically target complexity by eliminating as much ambiguity and uncertainty as possible. And those business processes must be easy to understand and execute. That's the dictionary definition of simple. The whole meaning behind design simplicity is to create a very different approach to transformation than an efficiency-based one. And let's look at this in practice. Cargill, the US-based global food company, applied design simplicity when they set out to transform category management. Their approach was to give users an enterprise of workflows, tools, and templates, and to guide them as to which ones to use for their specific categories. They made the category managers the focus of the transformation, not the transformation process itself. And to avoid the usual pitfalls associated with transformation, they made reducing progress and ambiguity an objective and intentional measurable goal. They simplified process requirements. They developed an execution strategy to make implementation easier. They transformed in stages, deliberately, to manage added difficulty on users. And they used a transformation dashboard to monitor change and category management maturity. By designing simplicity into the process of transformation, Cargill was able to grow 85% of its category team internally without needing to hire new talent. And procurement's return on investment increased from 3 times to 12 times during the implementation period. Now, although other transformations were taking place at the same time, Cargill's chief procurement officer attributes 65 to 70% of the improvement to how category management was transformed. So put design simplicity to work today. Be deliberate and intentional and prioritize user experience. Tackle complexity by eliminating as much ambiguity and uncertainty as possible. And make the resulting business processes easy to understand and execute. Now, with a multi-value strategy, anti-fragility, and design simplicity as the foundation, we turn to the technologies of the day: artificial intelligence and generative AI. If you want to move to drive as a supply chain leader, you need to unlock the value of how your people collaborate with AI in their work. And we have done this through previous technology transformations, such as the emergence of the internet and then cloud computing. And during these transformations, we've learned a great deal about how we can bring technologies together with people to create new value. It may surprise you to know that the first known AI project, called Logic Theorists, dates back to 1955. Since then, The technology has been deployed in multiple use cases, and now in 2024, we find ourselves at the top of an AI hype cycle, one that has reached fever pitch, being ramped up by the latest strain, generative AI. And the question on many of our minds is, will Gen AI really be different? Will ChatGPT be helping my daughter with her homework in 5 years' time? I certainly hope so. But before answering these questions, we need to be abundantly clear on what Gen AI is and what it is not, and to make sure that your stakeholders and teams are all speaking the same language. Traditional AI is largely used for analysis, forecasting, and automation. Generative AI is a subset of artificial intelligence, but rather than identifying and predicting patterns or automating tasks, it creates brand new artifacts at scale that preserve a likeness to the original data. The next question then becomes, is this all hype or truly the next frontier? Might we be heading for disappointment? Well, we're about to find out, because 60% of supply chain leaders are planning to implement Gen AI in the next year. And they're committing close to 6% of their budgets in doing so. This is big money, and it's big money at risk because of our track record with traditional AI. Our research shows that only 54% of AI pilots make it to production, meaning that you almost flip a coin to determine your chances of success. And at the core of this coin flip isn't a technology problem, it's a people problem. Whether it's traditional AI or Gen AI, these technologies require people to use them effectively to generate the return on your investment. And more so than other technologies of the past, the adoption of AI and Gen AI requires understanding and trust. Organizations in Drive recognize that trust is built on clear, tangible use cases that address employee experience and interaction, because we need to see this technology with our own eyes. Equipping teams with the tools and training to help them partner with AI to generate value and monitor and manage the limitations and user anxieties. But these organizations also understand that AI is not there to replace people, it's there to enhance what they do. And building trust can only be achieved by creating winning use cases. And the most powerful use cases are very often those technologies where human-machine collaborations, where tools like AI can synthesize large amounts of data to find patterns and insights. Meanwhile, humans can apply the broader context, often missing from these data sets, to manage exceptions and improve performance. We have to recognize, though, that these interactions are complex and take time to fully embed into work processes. And that's a patience that we don't always have. This impatience is so prevalent that the researcher Roy Amara created a law to explain it. Amara's law said that we tend to overestimate the impact of technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long. And if you don't believe Roy, you can just look at what you yourselves have told us. For the past 7 years, we've asked organizations about their current investments in various technologies and where they saw adoption in 2 years' time. And when we surveyed companies in 2019, more than half expected to be fully deployed by 2021, yet in 2022, only a third had reached that particular goal. Let's call this digital deployment optimism, which is a nicer term than our first idea, which is digital deployment delusion. Now, to avoid this misplaced optimism, you need to know that your AI deployments, the key initiatives and the investments that they will support and the problems that they're likely to solve. And then establish a realistic timeline, not just for deploying the technology, but building the support amongst the stakeholders to ensure that your teams will fully adopt it. With clear use cases, stakeholder support, and realistic timelines, you can move to equip your teams so that they can deliver value with the tools and the training that they required. That's exactly what Philip Morris, the US-based tobacco company, did with their autonomous planning initiative. They equipped their teams with machine learning and AI tools and invested in upgrading the data analysis skills of their teams, knowing that simply requiring teams to spend minimum hours with AI and Gen AI tools would lead to the first big breakthroughs. And the Philip Morris results were impressive. They reduced the time for planning and fulfillment, they reduced decision-making time, and they increased decision accuracy. In the Gen AI arena, Rush University Medical Center in Chicago has applied the same leadership playbook to go beyond just creating a more data-savvy workforce. With the help of Gen AI, they equipped their team to take on tasks outside of the traditional supply chain. Rush used both traditional and generative AI together to help with its backorder fulfillment processes. And with the new composite AI approach, they went from needing 4 to 5 people managing the process full-time to just one team member working on it for 1 hour each day. Employees used the time saved to start reviewing supplier contracts, a process that had previously taken place within the company's legal team. Here's Jeremy Strong from Rush to tell us what it means for their teams to be able to do more with these technologies and their newly reimagined roles.
Well, with Gen AI, we have an incredible opportunity to revolutionize our supply chains and greatly enhance our ability to strategically impact our organizations. By using Gen AI effectively, we can not only become more productive in our work, but actually expand what's possible. One of the best impacts Gen AI has had on my team members is that they're no longer spending most of their day on rote, repetitive tasks. They've gone from jobs that make them feel like box pushers to jobs that make them feel more innovative, strategic, and even critical to the organization. Some of my team would have never considered working on something like supplier contract management even a few years ago, but support from Gen AI has made taking on those tasks possible for them. Ultimately, Gen AI has helped us perform at the peak of our profession and has changed the view of supply chain within the Rush healthcare system. Gen AI has helped us become a powerful strategic asset, and frankly, I think we're only getting started with what we can accomplish with this new technology. As our team transitioned away from traditional responsibilities to move to higher level tasks and decision making, we also recognized that some of our workforce could actually find this intimidating or even experience a sense of loss. So we ensured our management team was equipped to identify signs of change fatigue, as well as provide targeted coaching and support to prevent the team from reverting back to those previous workflows and processes.
Building trust and success takes time. And in the case of Gen AI and automation, you will need leadership to overcome the resistance that you may encounter from your teams. When companies invest in some of the newest and greatest technologies, only for their employees to ignore the output and still work in the old ways, it's like you might as well give them Ferraris, but they still take the bus. So build trust and move to drive by establishing clear use cases with targets for your return on investment. Equip teams with the tools and training to help them partner with AI and Gen AI to generate value. And monitor and manage the limitations and the user anxieties. This morning, we've reflected on a position that many supply chains, including yours, likely find themselves in today. Your dedication, innovation, and skill sets have seen you emerge from the most recent crisis while you continue to battle other ones. But you find yourself in an unfamiliar state, one that feels different to any one in which you've been in recent times. And because that part of the organization where your supply chain previously existed doesn't exist anymore, you have to determine what the future of your supply chain is going to be. Earlier, I presented this as a choice, but it's not. There's no choice to be made here. just a series of relentless opportunities. So think about how you operate your supply chain today. Think of all the extremely hard work you do and your teams do under incredibly difficult circumstances. Think of the successes you've had despite the environment in which you've had to operate in. And think of operation within the straitjacket of cost control, preventing the delivery of value and feeling like it's getting tighter and tighter. And then simply think of drifting along until the next crisis lands on your doorstep. Now think about the future where you move to drive. A future where the supply chain delivers multiple forms of value to the business. A future where anti-fragility turns uncertainty and disruption into value creation. A future where design simplicity unleashes transformation programs that are more successful. And a future where people partner with AI and generative AI accelerate and innovate value creation. Your future has yet to be written, and you hold the pen. So seize this opportunity, seize this initiative. Unlock and unleash the new value creation that will permanently change the relationship between your supply chain and your company. So move forward from here. Move your supply chain to a place it has never been to before. Move to drive. Thank you.